Most of the time, we see surrender or we think about surrender as a passive last-ditch resort. In our societal understanding of surrender, we see surrender as a point of weakness. If we appreciate that we are stewards of what we have, it's a very different mindset to being an owner. Stewards are interested in the greater good, thinking beyond the present, the job of supervising or taking care of something, constantly prepared for someone else to take over. If we believe that all our wealth, whether it's cars, houses, finance, physical wealth, social status, time wealth, whatever it is that you define, belongs and is owned by someone else, it changes the way we manage and deal with it. If you believe that you own everything and you are the owner, you will treat it very differently. Because if you're an owner, you want it to benefit you and you alone. You want it to benefit yourself and everything that you want to do, but everyone else comes secondary. Sometimes when it comes to wealth, we are very tempted to look over our shoulder to compare to other people. Surrender when it comes to wealth is being content with what you have, not jealous. With your current wealth situation, are you content or are you jealous? Okay, well, welcome back to our last part of our series. We've been doing 5 parts of finance, and then we had 2 additional ones. That's why it's called +3, because we added the third one. So 9 altogether. We made it all the way to the end. Today we're going to finish on this topic called surrender, giving it all up to get more back. Is losing everything to gain everything worth growth? Now we're going to talk about it in the context of money and wealth, what we've been talking about for the last 6 months, I think, almost, just about. We started in March, it's now August, it's quite a long time. But hopefully this brings together all the different components and brings together all the different parts as well. Just make sure our clickers are working, and then off we go. All right, surrendering, giving it all up, getting more back. There are 4 types of wealth. People say there are 4 types of wealth. Social wealth or status, financial wealth or money. We've been talking a little bit about that in the last few presentations. Time wealth or freedom, and physical wealth or health. So if you want to be wealthy, it's not just about your money and your possessions. We talked about this already, but it's a little bit more than that. There's social, there's time, there's physical. We learned over the last 2 presentations, the +1 and +2 around contentment, and last week we learned about wealth and character, that there's, I think, a little bit more than just these 4 things. So you may be healthy in terms of your physical health, you may be free in terms of your time, you may have status in society with your social status, and you may be wealthy in terms of your finances, but that doesn't necessarily translate into completeness or holistic wealth as we have been learning over the last 2 weeks. And so I want to go and do a quick recap for those of you who are joining us for and missed out on last presentation before diving into today's topic. If you remember, we learned 7 things about wealth from Solomon. Number 1, desire for wealth is good and healthy and is given by God. We talked about that last week. It forms the basis of why we are interested in money, we are interested in wealth. Number 2, wealth is healthy when it's not competing with things that money can't buy or immortal treasure. Number 3, wealth brings increased responsibility but also increased headaches. Sorry about the font. But wealth reveals selfish natures that appear in adversity. We talked about that last week. Number 5, wealth brings peculiar temptations. Number 6, wealth often makes things complicated. And number 7, which is what our main topic was last week, wealth reflects your character before what you actually do in terms of your money. We decided and we came to the conclusion, first of all, when we were presented with the fact that contentment is the most important thing when it comes to wealth. And then last week, the motivations behind wealth have to do with the very character that helps you to make your decisions. And today we're going to tackle a very interesting topic because that requires us to be able to appreciate and understand a little bit more around how this plays into our life on a day-to-day basis. Okay? Anyone recognize this man? I gave you a clue. Do you know what his name is?
Mr. Colgate.
Oh, well, what a convenient guess. Well, Colgate is now synonymous with brushing your teeth every morning, right? This man's name is William Colgate. He's the founder of the Colgate Palmolive Company back in the early 19th century. He was actually a young man from England who emigrated to the United States to start business. And he had very little money and faced significant challenges in establishing himself and also a business. But eventually, he started off making soap, and then that's where the palm olive type stuff comes from. And then it eventually got to toothpaste, and then it became Colgate Palmolive. Today, it's one of the biggest companies in the world. Every morning when you go to brush your teeth, you see his name or this brand all over your toothpaste, generally speaking, Western countries. In fact, they've bought over much of the toothpaste industry in the world. They own other brands too that are used in other countries. If you come from Asia, there's a brand called Dali that's now owned by Colgate as well. So a big company. One of the interesting things about William Colgate is that he decided very early on when he was starting his business, before he even was successful, that he was going to be someone who would give the money that he earned away. So even when his business was still young in its fledgling years, he committed to give 10% away, and then it became 20, and then 30, and then 40, and eventually 50% of all the company ever earned. In his mind, William Colgate very clearly decided that surrendering the profits of the company to benefit other people was at the core of what he believed in. And that was something that drove him. And so today you hear, in our presentations, we've covered some topics from rich people. Remember we talked about Bill Gates wanting to give away his fortune, Warren Buffett wanting to giving away his riches. And we all hear from time to time, even William Colgate, I guess, decided to do that. But he decided to do that much earlier on compared to some of these more rich people who have decided at a later stage when they have maybe, some would say, too much wealth. What compels and drives these people to surrender their profits? Surrender. And that's the word that we're going to look at today. I'm going to use a story from the Bible to illustrate this. These are some AI illustrations that you may want to look at. And I'm going to highlight 6 points around surrender. These 6 points, I believe, are what drove William Colgate to live the way he did and to make decisions about his wealth that can give us some lessons in the way we deal with our wealth and our finances as well. If you have a Bible or if you're interested, you can turn to Matthew chapter 25. The story is found there. If not, you can follow along with the pictures on the screen, or you can look on your phone and the companion story. So I'm going to tell the story bit by bit, but the whole story is found in Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. It is colloquially known as a story about talents. Some versions of the story use the word talents. Some version of the story uses the word gifts. Some versions of the story use the word treasure. There's a few different versions of the story, but I'm going to use the word talents because that's the version that I'm familiar with. And as we go through this story, I'm going to highlight 6 key components about surrender. Okay? 6 key components about surrender. Most of the time, we see surrender or we think about surrender as a passive last-ditch resort, you know? When you are competing against someone or you're fighting a battle, when you surrender, it means you've lost. Or it means you're giving up. Or it means the other person has won. In a war, what color flag do you wave if you want to surrender? White. Everyone knows that, right? If you put a white flag up, you put this up, and then everything stops because they take over. You know, if you're wrestling and you want to surrender, what do? How many times do you tap the ground? Twice or 3 times. If you are boxing and your corner or your team wants to give up or surrender, they wave a towel, right? So these are all indications in our language, in our societal understanding of surrender. We see surrender as a point of weakness, as in you've lost, you're not able to beat the other team, you're not able to win. And so usually when we talk about being rich, we talk about wealth. Wealth and surrender are 2 concepts that don't usually go together. Because if you make money, it means that you've earned the money somehow from someone else and you've won, right? If you get rich in society, it generally doesn't mean that you've surrendered. Does that make sense? If you are going to be considered someone who is rich in the 4 areas of wealth that I showed at the front of the screen, you are someone who has made it. Generally speaking, people will talk about wealth as, I have made my first million, you've made it. You can retire early, you have won. You don't talk about saying you can retire early, you've surrendered all the choices that you have. So why am I talking about surrender today? Well, you find out as you go through this story to be able to appreciate that actually, even though these two concepts don't seem to go together, they actually do. And that forms the basis of finding the true meaning of wealth. So the story starts like this, where there is a man, this is the man I assume, he's an owner, he's a businessman. And in fact, it's very interesting, this story is the last story that Jesus tells before he's crucified. So in case you are Bible students, you realize that this is actually one of the last things that he leaves the people that he's talking to. But he tells a story about a businessman who's going on a far journey. Now, I'm about to go on my sabbatical, so this story resonates with me a lot. Because this past week, I spent about 5 hours talking to my 3 employees about what to do when I'm not here. So the story here is like this is my past week's experience. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that, okay? So when we're going away, if I own a business or if a businessman is going away and he's not here for a long period of time, there are a few things that need to be sorted out. What things need to be sorted out, do you think, when you go away on a long trip? Someone has to look after paying the employees, yeah? Otherwise, the employees don't get paid, they're all going to leave. They're going to stop working. Okay, that's one thing. What other things you need to look after? Sorry? Clients? Someone needs to look after the clients or customers. Yeah, that's good. What else? Someone needs to look after? Bills? Yes. Someone needs to pay the bills. Yes. Anything else?
When to call you and when not to call you.
Don't call me. When to escalate problems? Yes. When a businessman goes away, when a business owner goes away, does he or she want the business to thrive, to stagnate, or to fail? Yeah, it's a rhetorical question, right? No business owner, when they go away, wants the business to fail. If the business fails, it means they haven't set the business up well enough to thrive when they are not there. And so this is the same story as the businessman in this particular version of the story, that he's going away and he wants things to thrive. So when this week, I had to make sure that my employees all have appropriate access to the bank account, because otherwise someone can't pay the bills, right? I need them to pay the bills so that we can get the stock so we can run our business. I need to make sure someone is checking the pay slip every 2 weeks, the pay thing, to make sure people get paid so that they continue to do the business. All my employees then now have certain goals for the next 2, 3, 6 months to achieve, to make sure that the business continues to grow when I'm not here. Does that make sense? So I imagine that this man is doing the same thing with his 3 employees. And so this is the story in Matthew chapter 25. When he is entrusting what we call talents or money, or maybe some responsibilities, whatever version you want to use. For me, I didn't entrust strictly just the money. I gave them the bank account card they signed up. But I also gave them some responsibilities for the business. And to one of the employees who's been with me for a longer period of time, he has more responsibilities. For someone who is a little bit more new to my practice, to my clinic, to my business, I only gave a smaller amount of responsibility, right? So I divide this amount equally. And this story goes in Matthew chapter 25, that there is a man who is going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property, responsibilities, or talents. He gives this, I'm going to go backwards. He gives these 3 people some money, some responsibilities, some things to do when he's away. And so this is kind of how we start the context. You see, one of the reasons why I believe this encapsulates the way we should picture wealth is that each of my employees are a little bit nervous. This is the first time that I'm going away for such a long period of time. I've been away for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, but always come back. And I told them I may be hiking in the middle of the Alps. I may not have reception. So, Heinrich, you want to try and call me, and maybe they can't get hold of me. What are you going to do? So they're all a little bit nervous. And they're a little bit nervous because they are being given responsibility and the business doesn't belong to them. So they're a bit nervous about how to manage things. Okay, what happens? Because this is not my money, right? So I still I have to answer to someone. I have some responsibilities that I have to carry out. And so in their mind, whilst the business is there to run, they are part of it, they are not the owners, they are the stewards. I use that word. The first thing that we need to understand about surrender in terms of wealth is that if we appreciate that we are stewards of what we have, it's a very different mindset to being an owner. Stewards are different to being an owner. Number one, surrender is stewardship, not ownership. If you came to our presentation on giving, I put this picture up. So this is a bit of revision here. You'll see the difference between ownership on the left and stewardship on the right. Owners on the left are only interested in thinking about the present for personal benefit because they're in charge. On the right, stewards are interested in the greater good, thinking beyond the present, the job of supervising or taking care of something. I've been put in charge, accountability, doing a good job with others in mind, constantly prepared for someone else to take over. My employees are very excited for me to come back. When are you coming back? So that we can give you back the responsibility. Because it weighs on them. Now, if someone entrusted you with $1 million and they say, in 6 months I'm coming back, would you be able to sleep well at night? A bit nervous, right? What happens if someone steals the $1 million? What happens if someone scams me of that $1 million? It doesn't belong to me. If I lose it, I'm going to have to repay it back to someone who's owner. And so that's the way that stewards think. They're thinking that their job is to supervise or take care of something. In fact, in the Bible, in a different place, in Psalms chapter 24, verse 1, it says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." Psalms 24, verse 1. If we believe that all our wealth, whether it's cars, houses, finance, physical wealth, social status, time wealth, whatever it is that you define, belongs and is owned by someone else, it changes the way we manage and deal with it. If you believe that you own everything and you are the owner, you will treat it very differently. Because if you're an owner, you want it to benefit you and you alone. If you're an owner, you want it to benefit yourself and everything that you want to do, but everyone else comes secondary. If you are a steward, if everything belongs to someone else, your responsibility is to take care of it, not to benefit yourself. It's supposed to be taken care of for the benefit of the owner. Just like my employees are making sure the business thrives, not survives, I hope, for the business owner. Number 2, verse 15 of Matthew chapter 25, it says, "To one he gave 5 talents, to another he gave 2, another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went away." So in this story, in the business owner, he doesn't distribute equal amounts. Maybe he gives Christian 10, Bettina 5, and Vaughn, you only got 2, or Vesey got 1. There's unequal distribution. And that doesn't mean that each person is better than someone else, or one person who got more is better than someone else. But what it does mean is that the allocation is different. Sometimes when it comes to wealth, we are very tempted to look over our shoulder to compare to other people. And so the second part of surrender is not just stewardship, not ownership. But the second point is surrender is contentment, not jealousy. If we believe that the owner is God and God owns everything and he distributes unequally, or I can put it in a different way, God gives each of us different amounts and different types of resources, then we should be content, not jealous, which is what Janelle talked about in our first +1 seminar, right? Surrender when it comes to wealth is being content with what you have, not jealous. If you are consistently jealous that someone else is richer than you, has a bigger house than you, has a nicer car than you, has fancier clothes than you, has a more expensive bag than you, you will never be able to surrender because you will always be chasing something that you don't have. Surrender is not just stewardship. Surrender is also contentment. This is a really interesting statement. Greed is a bottomless pit which exhausts the person in an endless effort to satisfy the need without ever reaching satisfaction. People say that greed is not a financial issue, it's a character problem. That's what we talked about last week, right? Mahatma Gandhi said that the earth has enough for every man's need, but not enough for every man's greed. In fact, if you look throughout the Bible, you will find various stories of how greed or lack of contentment or jealousy was an evidence of non-surrender. In fact, one of the most famous stories, if you remember, was Judas, Jesus' own disciple, who betrayed Jesus because he was greedy for how much? 30 pieces of silver, which is the equivalent to the price of a slave. Because of that, he was willing to sacrifice. He was not content with what he had, and therefore he was actually willing to surrender in a different way by giving up his master Jesus. This is a very classic example. And so surrender is not only about stewardship when it comes to wealth, but it's also about being content. And so my question is, with your current financial situation, with your current wealth situation, are you content or are you jealous? Are you comfortable and happy, or are you always looking over your shoulder at someone else and comparing to them? Because if you consistently compare, you will not be able to surrender, because you will always be chasing something that you don't have. Number 3. Verse 16 of the story, Matthew 25 says, he who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded. So the man who got 5 responsibilities, 5 talents, started to go and trade. And he made 5 more talents. What percent gain is that for those of you who do maths? 100% gain. That's pretty good, 100% gain. If my employee could get 100% gain, double the size of my clinic when I'm back, I'm going to promote this employee. It's very good. It can be the new boss. So also he had the 2 talents, went to make 2 talents more. How much is that? 100% gain too. Second employee, really good. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. So we have 3 different servants. Servant number 1 had 5 talents, went out, traded, invested, whatever he did, used the money and earned 100% more. Servant number 2, employee number 2, 2 talents, went out, traded, utilized, smaller amount, but he still got 100% return, right? Did really well. Employee number 3, what did he do? Went home, dug a hole, buried it, and went to bed. Surrender, third point, is not just stewardship. Surrender is not just being content. Surrender is utilization. I can wisely use what I'm given rather than bearing it. We talked during our presentations about the concept of getting rich quick. Now, many people, when I talk about laziness, can come in 2 forms here when it comes to deciding about wealth. The first one is, everyone wants this. I just want to give someone the money and just sit there, and I want the money back tomorrow without putting any effort in. I want someone to come and help me to get rich quick. And there are books and podcasts and Instagram, all sorts of things telling you that you can get rich quick. Now, in fact, if you hear about a finance seminar that tells you can make $1 million in 2 days, everyone would go to the seminar, right? If you believe what they say. And so our minds are programmed to not use it diligently, use our wealth or to work for our wealth diligently, but our minds are programmed to try to be lazy. I'll put it that way. But there's also another way that I think that this sometimes comes in. It's not just that we want to get rich quick, that we just want to put no effort in and get all the reward. That's one component of non-surrender. But the other component is this concept I call analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is this cycle. Someone drew it this way. You think and think and think and think, and then you get paralyzed, and then you think about it some more, and then it goes round in a corner. And sometimes what happens is analysis paralysis affects not only our finances, but the way we make decisions about money. So you think about it, and then you don't think about it. And so I can imagine that this man with 1 talent, this employee with 1 talent, was probably one of 2 things. Either he was just lazy and he was like, I'm just going to let it sit there and just get rich quick. One day I hope that someone's going to come and offer me a best bargain, and then I can just make a quick buck, and then I can give it back to my master. So I'll just bury it in the meantime. I'm just lazy, just leave it there. Or the other option is that he's so paralyzed, which I think is probably the more likely scenario, that he doesn't actually do anything with the money. Maybe someone's going to come and steal it. If I invest it, maybe the stock market's going to crash. Or if I invest it, someone's going to scam me of my money. If I do this, something's going to happen. And we saw this, a little bit of this concept of fear at times when the world goes through crises. You remember when COVID first started, there was actually quite a few people who went to the bank to draw out their money in cash to hide it under their mattress because they worried that the bank would crash, or they were worried that something was going to happen, and therefore they're going to stuff it under there and leave it there in cold hard cash. Now, I'm not saying they are stupid people, but what I'm trying to say is that sometimes what happens is that when we get into this loop, we then we are not actually diligent with the way we use our money. But it extends beyond just wealth. Remember, wealth is not just money, it's not just financial possessions, it's not just material possessions, but it's also the way you then approach your health. It also is the way you approach your time. It's also the way you approach life decisions that you make. And so if we are constantly stuck in this cycle where we are lazy, either lazy to make a decision or lazy by not using our time wisely or not making sure our health is up to scratch, we will fall into this component and this cycle of doing what this employee did by simply metaphorically burying the talent in the ground and leaving it for when the master comes back. So as you've gone through the finance seminars, surrender is about stewardship, it's about being content, but it's also about how you use the things that you have now learned. Many of you have learned something, right, from the seminar, whether it's about your super, whether it's about saving, whether about spending, about debt, about financial independence. We learn all these things, but if it's just learning all these things and it just sits there forever, it would be no use. Or if you learn all these things and you go around in this loop and constantly like, oh no, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's too hard, it's too... It's never actually going to be able to help you to grow. Not only just grow in terms of your money grows, but the way you make decisions. So surrender is about stewardship. Surrender is about contentment. Surrender is also about utilization. After a long time, verse 19 of the story, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. After a long time, this businessman comes back from his trip. At least my employees know that I'm coming back at a certain time. They know the date I'm coming back. Maybe this businessman never told them, I'll be back in a few months. I've got to go and do some business somewhere. And so, okay, he's coming back. But when he comes back, it's very clear that the first thing he does when he comes back, he calls his employees to the boardroom table and says, now, what happened when I was away? Right? And you can imagine that you've got to present a case about what happened. If I gave Heinrich the 5 customers, you're going to have to tell me what happened with the 5 customers. If I gave Vessi 2 responsibilities, you're going to have to tell me whether those 2 things were fulfilled. The master brings to account, the owner brings to account all the things that he has distributed. And so if we are good stewards, we surrender by acknowledging that one day we are going to be accountable for what we are given. If I lend you something to look after, I hope to get it back. I know we have some keen gardeners here who, when they go away, lend their plants to other people to look after. Now, if you kill the plant, you are in trouble. You better go and find a plant from somewhere else, right? Because you are supposed to take care of responsibility, and when you come back, hopefully the plant has grown even more. Don't trust me, your plants may not survive all the time. And so the concept here is that if we believe that God owns everything, He wants me as a steward to manage well what He has given me. In the 2000s, this man, anyone know who this is? You knew who Colgate was, I gave you the clue. This man's name is Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff is one of the most famous, I would say infamous people in Wall Street history. Anyone heard of a Ponzi scheme before? You know what a Ponzi scheme is? A Ponzi scheme is basically an investment scheme where you invest something expecting a very high return, and the only way you get that return is because someone else has invested, and so they use the money for that someone else has invested to pay the first person out. So there's no actual investment that happens. It's simply what we call a pyramid or Ponzi scheme. Bernie Madoff was one of the first people, sorry, not one of the first. Bernie Madoff was found guilty for instigating one of the biggest Ponzi schemes ever in history. $65 billion. Billion dollars. This is a Wall Street banker who spent a lot of time developing electronic trading. And he made a lot of money for himself. So he's actually really quite a wealthy man. And because of that, people trusted their money to him to invest. There came a point, not sure quite when, but somewhere in the late 1990s, early 2000s, where he decided, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything. So he started to what we call cook the books. He would collect money from people, exclusive clients. Let's say Heinrich respects Bernie, he gives me his savings, life savings. And then I would literally say, oh, I'm going to invest it in this type of investment. But what Bernie did was he took Heinrich's money and put it into the bank and just left it there. And then he has to pay Heinrich out. So May invests with Bernie, and now May's money is given to Heinrich. And so he has this cycle. This is what we call a Ponzi scheme. And Heinrich looked very happy because he got the reward. So he told Christian. Now Christian puts his money with Bernie, and then Bernie uses Christian's money to pay May. And it continues. This guy did this thing for many, many, many years until eventually one day, as things in the 2008 financial crisis, when the stock market started to crash, people started to ask him for their money back because they need the money to survive. And because of that, when so many people ask you for money, you can't find a Vaughan to take the money to pay Christian back because no one wants to invest their money. Everyone wants it out. And he began to find that he could not repay people's investments. One day he confessed to his 2 sons that he had done this for quite a number of years. And the next day they turned him over to the financial police, and he was charged and eventually convicted. He was convicted to 150 years in prison for the collective financial fraud that he had instigated on all these people. Unfortunately, he died of cancer in prison in 2021. Bernie was not accountable for the money that people had given him. Very clear, right? He said he was investing, but what was he doing? Leaving it in the bank account. And in the trial, when the judge and prosecutors were asking, why did you do it? He said, I don't know why I did it. I have enough money to live on. I made all my money on Wall Street. I just don't know why I did it. Maybe I enjoyed the fame. Maybe I was scared of rejecting people, who kept investing with me because they respect me. I enjoyed that. And so I just kept going on. And before long, it became weeks and months and years. If we are not responsible and accountable for the things that our owner has given us, then we're going to end up like Bernie. One day, when time comes to account, you're not going to be able to find out. So the owner, the businessman, comes back, he calls everyone, and he says, okay, what are you going to do? What happened when I was away? And so Mandy says, well, I had 5 talents, and then I got 5 more. Oh, well done. And Vesey says, I had 2 responsibilities and I discharged them. Here's what happened. Well done. And then Vaughan, sorry Vaughan, I pick on you. You gave you 1 talent. What did you do? Oh, I buried it in the ground and now here you go. I give it back to you. That's it. And this is the story here. In verse 20 it says, and he who received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5. I have made 5. His master said to him, in our reading this morning, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And the same thing with the 2 talents. But when he got to the 1st talent, the man says something really interesting. The servant, the employee who had 1 talent said, Master, I know you are a hard task master. You expect a lot. And because of that, I was scared just in case I lost the money. That's why I bury it in the ground so that now when you come back, I can give it back to you whole, no losses whatsoever. And that was the motivation for this servant. Sometimes when it comes to money, when it comes to wealth, we are motivated by fear. It can be fear of a few things. It can be fear of missing out. Everyone's buying Bitcoin. I haven't bought Bitcoin. I better buy Bitcoin. It can be fear of your status being different. It can be fear of a whole range of different things. But if our motivation is fear, if fear drives our financial decisions, I can say that will never allow you to truly surrender. If fear drives your decisions in life, you will not be able to fully surrender. I want you to think broader than just money now. When was the last time you made a decision that was motivated by fear? Fear of failure? Fear of poor outcomes? Fear of risk? That could be your job, your career, relationships, it could be money, it could be any of these things. So some of these things, as you see, may start with money, but they actually extend beyond that. It extends to how you make decisions in life. We do not have a fear of the unknown, this author says. What we fear is giving up the known. Surrender is not just about stewardship, it's not just about contentment, it's not just about utilizing money well, it's not just about being accountable for what you are given and charged to be responsible for. surrender is also about examining your motivations. What drives your wealth decisions? What drives the decisions you make in life? And if you are driven by a spirit of fear, if you're driven predominantly by that, you will struggle to actually fully surrender. You will always be held back by something. Number 6. As the story continues, the master, after looking and hearing the accounts of everything that was going on, he tells the 2 servants, the one that had 5 and the one that had 2, which doubled what they had, he tells them, "You have been faithful over a little, I will now set you over much." But he finishes with an interesting saying. He basically says this: "Heinrich, you have been a really good employee. You've done a good job. I'm going to give you more responsibility. I'm going to make you the new boss, the new manager." But he says something very interesting to finish. He says, "Enter into the joy of your master." Being a responsible servant is not just about doubling the amount of responsibilities that you get. It's not just about doubling the amount of wealth that you get. It's just not just about increasing your material possessions or gain. But being a good steward is actually developing a true reward, and that is trust of the owner. Trust of the owner. You see, the ultimate gain for these employees, the true reward, not just the temporary reward, was not just to increase the talents from 5 to 10, from 2 to 4, or from 1 to 2. It was actually to gain the trust of the master, which helps them to grow in terms of a relationship moving forward. Surrender means that you are looking towards the true reward, not just the temporary. A few presentations ago, I ran out of time to tell you a little bit of a story about one of the people that I know. I'm going to tell you the story today. This guy's name is Gary. Gary is a successful entrepreneur. Now, if you have an iPhone, I don't have an iPhone, but Gary developed a series. One of his first ventures was a case for the iPhone called LifeProof. LifeProof was bought up, the IP for it was bought up by OtterBox. You remember the OtterBox cases, the big one that looks really clunky but really solid? You drop your iPhone, it doesn't break. It's right here. Yeah, Vessi has one, the demo products here. Yeah. So Gary made LifeProof, which was bought by OtterBox as a company. So he's a very successful startup entrepreneur. He then went on to develop 2 or 3 other different things that was bought up, and he founded 2 startups that was bought up. So very successful businessman. He's made it in terms of success. But you see, for Gary, even though he's what people will call a serial entrepreneur, always likes to invent new things, start up new companies, sell them and make some money along the way, this was not the true thing that he was looking for. That's only a temporary reward. Developing a phone box case to be bought up by OtterBox, great. Tick off, good business deal, well done, successful. But in his mind, the true reward in terms of his wealth, in terms of his possessions, in terms of his gain, was seeing the ability to help other people who are not as fortunate to benefit. So you remember William Colgate? In William Colgate's case, his way was giving back his profits, right? So his true reward is not making Colgate the biggest biggest toothpaste company in the world, but it was actually to be able to, the more toothpaste he sold, the more he could actually give to other people. That was his true reward. For Gary, his true reward is helping people to actually start to be able to appreciate and access things that they haven't been able to do so otherwise. Gary's latest venture is something called Plana, P-L-A-N-A. This is the website. I just took a screenshot of the website. It's a really interesting thing. It basically is helping women who are less health literate and not able to understand some of the things, who have either gone through a miscarriage, a failed pregnancy, infertility, or abortion. One of those things. And he does something where he puts people who unfortunately are not able to have children, women, with someone who is going through an unexpected pregnancy, and puts them together to form like a little bit of a peer-to-peer mentor-mentee relationship. Very interesting thing he's doing. It's a not-for-profit organization, free. So Gary believes that all the money, the wealth, the possessions, the things that he has earned are great, good wealth, he's successful, but true surrender for him, in his mind, is to be able to help other people to benefit from the things that he values, the things that he's been able to use, not to gain, just in terms of money, but the skills and the things that he has learned through life. And this is the way he's giving back to people who are less fortunate. That's the true reward. So surrender is not just the ability to be able to be good stewards. It's not just the ability to be content with what you have and not jealous and looking over your shoulder all the time at other people. It's not just the ability to be able to use, not be lazy, not be paralyzed, but to be able to use the things that you've been given, to be accountable and responsible for those things, to not have a motivation of fear, but a motivation towards something that is a true reward. And so if you want to be able to be truly surrendered, or if you want to truly surrender your decisions about wealth, you need to understand and decide what your true reward is for your money. If you had all the things in the world when it comes to wealth, physical wealth, time wealth, status, financial wealth, what would you actually consider a true reward? For this businessman, he was the most happy, not with the money and the extra things that the servants had earned for him, but the fact that he could trust his employees. Do you understand what I'm getting at? He's more interested in the relationship and the trust than he is in the financial gain. He's more interested in the culture that he's developing in his business than he is in the success and the profit of the business. In your life, are your financial or other decisions motivated towards something that is temporary or long-lasting? Something that is purely about gain or something that means more? If someone were to give you $1 million today, what would you do with it? What is your true reward? We saw this passage last week. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. If you look at the context of this story was actually told by Jesus. Jesus compares himself to the businessman. And so Jesus uses this verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 to actually articulate and describe what this businessman's true reward is. He really wants you to become rich. He doesn't want himself to become rich. And he's happy to be poor so that through his poverty, you might become rich. William Colgate was very happy to be poor by donating all his possessions, all his profits of his company so that other people can benefit rather than himself. My friend Gary is very happy to invest back into other people at his expense in a not-for-profit organization so that other people can benefit at his expense. Because for him, that is true reward. As you're going about your life and making decisions about your money, making decisions about your career, making decisions about your future plans in life, are you able to say, my true reward is this, and therefore I'm truly able to surrender? I'm going to finish with this very famous, very classic story. You know the story of the monkey with a coconut? This is a monkey trap, right? In the villages in Asia, this is how you catch a monkey. You make a coconut or a jar with enough space for the monkey to put their hand in, and you can put the hand in, but if inside the coconut they have either some food or some peanuts or something that the monkey likes to eat, and if the monkey tries to grab it, the hand is now too big because of the fist of nuts to fit out the hole. But if the monkey lets go of the peanuts, he's able to take his hand out. Sometimes I feel like in our life, especially when it comes to our financial discussions over the last few months, we've been conditioned to be like this monkey. We're very good at putting our hand in, but it's very difficult for us to let go. Because letting go is seen to surrender. I need to give up certain things, the peanuts, the wealth, the status, the possessions, whatever it is that's inside this coconut or this jar. And sometimes when we come to understanding money, It requires us to shift our mindset away from just saying, I want to get rich quick. This is the motivation behind why I want to do things. But really, to understand that contentment, that money reflects your character, and that true surrender means you have to let go of the peanuts inside, whatever those peanuts are. Now, I don't know what the peanuts are in your life. It differs from person to person. It differs even in terms of wealth. In fact, one of the financial advice questions that I was reviewing when I was preparing some of the presentations was, if you go to a financial planner, sometimes they ask, I saw one question is, what would you be most upset about if you lost in terms of your assets? It's asking what peanuts are in the jar. Now, you could ask the same question of any aspect of your life. If you're wondering what your direction in life should be, if you're thinking about making decisions about your life, about where you want to go, what you want to do with your money, what you want to do with your career, what you want to do with your job, these questions are very similar. True surrender means that you understand that you are a steward, that you understand that contentment is the priority, that you understand that you need to be diligent and accountable for what you have, that you're motivated by a true reward that is bigger than just the peanuts in the coconut. By putting all these things together, by just reviewing this really simple story, it just helps us to be able to appreciate and understand that there is a lot more to life than just trying to get rich. And that if we're able to appreciate how this works with our wealth and our finances, it will also translate to the way we make decisions about every other aspect in life. You could argue that any of the things we talked about today could be applied to any component of decision making in your life. About your career, about any other facet that you may be going through, about your future, your prospects, whatever they may be. And I want to encourage you, as we finish today, there'll be a short time of reflection, just for you to think about all the things that we've covered over the last, not just this presentation, but over the last 6 months. We've talked about a lot of the different things. Remember that true surrender means that you have to really internalize and use what you have learned to make certain decisions about how you want to move forward. I'm going to ask Heinrich to play the musical reflection time, just for you to think. It's a song called Make Room, and then I will pass the time back to Janelle. Thank you.